Hello. So today we will be discussing um, like the what the drivetrain is, what the goals of the drivetrain are, and like what our responsibilities are, and some of the things we do in drivetrain or did over summer for drivetrain for the 27 car. And so there's no real slides for this. This is just me going through the CAD, which stands for computer aided design, and we're just going to be looking at the system we've made, and I'll be walking you guys through like a little bit of the drivetrain's responsibilities and what we mainly focus on. So the drivetrain is responsible for getting motor or getting power into our wheels. Suspension doesn't really care about how we do it. All we it, all we need to do is somehow get power from this motor or RPMs from this motor into the wheels. And so the way we've opted to do it is through a chain drive. So we have a motor, and then we drive our differential, which connects to your wheels, through um, this through a chain. I mean, the chain's not here because it's a little bit annoying to CAD, but just imagine there was a chain through, and that would transfer power from your sprocket to your differential. And at the bare bones, that's it. That's what your drivetrain is. And then you'll go into things like well, how do you size your sprockets, right? How do I know to use a big sprocket here and a small sprocket here? How do I know what size teeth to use, right? How do I know that these mounts I made are going to survive? How do I tension this chain? Because chain, if you just have it like hanging around, it's kind of loose. So you need to tighten it. So how are you going to tension it when it's in your system, right? How are you going to make your thing serviceable? How are you going to make it reliable? How are you going to interface with like electronics? And that's where a little bit more of like the nuance and more of the design comes in. And so some of the things we do is design an optimal gear ratio for this between our motor and our differential. And so what this means is we could, in theory, have an 11 tooth sprocket on the motor and then an 11 tooth sprocket on your differential, right? Or not really because it's too small to fit, but just pretend. And then you'd have one-to-one drive, right? So why don't we do that? Well, I'll get into it in the future, but it's to do with so you can get more torque into the ground, which will get you a better time, which will get you more points, right? You're going to be wasting some of your traction if you don't do this. And so we need to use as big of a sprocket as we can here and as small of a sprocket as we can here. And so then you might ask, like, why do you use a differential? Well, we use a limited slip differential because during turns it allows wheels to spin at separate speeds with separate torques, and then during straightaways it allows both wheels to spin at the same speed. And so there's other things like spools that you could use, which basically lock the two wheels together. You could use an open differential, which basically means it's not limited slip, which makes it kind of bad in straightaways or when it's like when there's slip or worse conditions. So that's a that's kind of a complicated video, and so we're going to have another video on that more specialized in regards to the differential. But for all intents and purposes, we don't really care about necessarily what the differential does right now. All we care about is driving it. And then drivetrain also has to decide our motor. Now this year we got kind of lucky, if you want to say it. We didn't have the budget and it wasn't in our team goals to get a more powerful motor. It would have caused electronics some headaches. It would have caused the budget to like fall apart because this is like $5,000. And so we decided to just use the same motor we've been using. And I'll get into there's going to be a video in the future talking about how you size your motor, right? If you were to start from scratch. But this is an MRX 208, and this is a Drexler LSD V1. And so um, then some other things we do are design these mounts, right? So you see these mounts, they have a lot of gaps in it. That's called triangulation, and we do that in order to save weight because, I mean, we are a race car and we're trying to maximize performance. So we do these triangles in order to try to save weight, as seen here, shown there. Um, but this year our team goals weren't in trying to minimizing weight to its like complete extent. Because you can see here, this is a half-inch plate. These ends are 0.375 inches. It's for mounting reasons and for assembly reasons, but in theory, I can make most of this plate 0.375 inches. Only this bearing area really needs to be zero point 0.5 inches, right? So why didn't I do that? Well, it's because for manufacturing considerations, right? For manufacturing, if they have to machine down so much of this material to 0.375, it's going to be a lot of time wasted. It's going to be hurting their tools. It's going to just like there's no real reason to do that. we're going to be saving a little bit of weight, maybe like 0.05, 0.08 pounds, right? But it's going to cost manufacturing a lot, and so they've asked us to try to not make them face material when they don't have to. So because our team goals weren't in maximizing every single gram or minimizing every single gram, this is what we've done in for considerations for manufacturing. Um, I believe we'll have a video in the future talking about DFM, which is called Design for Manufacturing, and that'll be by Joshua Oliveira, who is our manufacturing lead alongside Eric. So yeah, I mean, I don't know when that video will get made, but eventually. And then we also have to make this rules compliant. So luckily, Powertrain doesn't have too many rules, or at least the drivetrain doesn't. All you have to do is make sure that the motor is covered, make sure that the chain is covered, use some proper cooling, but overall, the rules are pretty lax. And so the scatter shield design actually changed quite a bit from last year because last year our scatter shield was very, very, very close to our motor. And what happened is it started sagging in some places and our motor actually started rubbing against the scatter shield. So you had to make some last minute changes to include some tabs that would actually pull the scatter shield away. But like it was like still kind of rubbing. So this year we gave it more distance, we gave it more mounting points, we made it a lot more secure. But yeah, I mean just small changes based on some issues that you see last year. And then last year we were seeing many issues with the deflection in our entire drivetrain because of some misalignment. And so this year we're making this entire drivetrain part more disassemblable in case we have issues that we need to, fix. And so that's why these two mounts are split. If you look at last year's, they were attached. If you look at 25s, they were attached. Um, I believe 24s were attached, not 23s, but we use this separation just so it's easier to, dismount this differential in case something goes wrong. So we think ahead to make sure that our part is manufacturable and serviceable, and actually it's easy to assemble. So a lot of these like distances were constrained such that you could fit a ratchet in here, so it's easier to assemble. Because this year, for example, we had this bolt go through, and there was only enough space to put a wrench on, and that was barely. So to tighten this nut on the other side, it was genuinely a 5-minute endeavor to tighten one nut, which is excessive for no reason. So we simply gave it like 0.3, 4.4 more inches, and now we're going to save 5 minutes every time we need to take this nut bolt off, which is very nice. But yeah, that's a brief overview into our um, drivetrain. And then let me think if there's any good questions I could ask in regards to the drivetrain. Okay, yeah. So as you can see, this is our tensioning mechanism that we use. So if I spin this, you can see that the sprocket gets closer and further away. So I want you guys to think about, is there any disadvantage in using these holes in order to line it up? This is called an eccentric mechanism. Like, what are some disadvantages to it? How could you mitigate it? I mean, there's some clever things we did with this design, but I won't tell you that. If you come up to me and are like, here's some disadvantages to using an eccentric with discrete holes, um, then I'll tell you like what we did. Or maybe I'll just tell you in the lectures. I'm not entirely sure yet. But yeah, what are some disadvantages to this? And then how could you, mitigate those disadvantages? And then are there any other chain tensioning designs you can think of, right? So we use an eccentric. Can you think of any other designs that would work? And then what would their pros and cons be, as compared to just using an eccentric that holds the differential in place and is able to, have bolts go through it, so you're able to discreetly place your differential where you need it to go. And so I guess that would be a good challenge. Maybe I'll cover it in lecture, maybe I won't. I'm not entirely sure yet, but just think about it. I might make a video about it in the future for like a calculator we did. So I mean, that'd be spoilers if you watch that before doing that. But this is just to challenge yourself. So yeah, that's it for this video.